Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste and a very warm welcome to all the viewers who have joined us for this talk. This is Sri Hari Vitthal, curator at Advaita Academy, Indika Moksha. And today we are going to be discussing and reflecting on a very interesting topic, that is Jnana Meets Bhakti. We have with us Brahmacharini Shubhani Chaitanya ji. Hari Om Shubhani ji. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hari Om.
Before I introduce Shubhani ji, I would like to start this session with an invocation. Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunattu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Shubhani Chaitanya ji is a disciple of Puja Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda. Born in Manila, bred in New York, and built in Bharat, she has grown through Chinmaya Mission as a Bal Vihar child, a dynamic chick, that is Chinmaya Yuva Kendra, and now a Brahmacharini posted in Chinmaya Mission, New York. She studied at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City, where she graduated with a bachelor's degree in international trade and marketing. After working in the fashion industry for around 7 years, she decided to take a sabbatical to find her true calling. This led her to join YEP, the Youth Empowerment Program, where she was involved in writing, editing books, organizing camps, teaching in schools. She also assisted in the script writing of Swami Chinmayananda's movie On a Quest, and later pursued her very own in Sandipni Sadhanalaya, Mumbai. She completed the Vedanta course in 2016, where she was initiated as Brahmacharini Shubhani Chaitanya. She brings a natural wisdom and compassion to her classes and loves sharing with people the science of happiness, that is Vedanta. She currently conducts classes on the Bhagavad Gita, Viveka Chudamani, Atma Bodha, and other Vedantic treatises. We are very, very happy and glad to have you with us, Shubhani ji. With that introduction, I would like to invite you to take over. Over to you, Shubhani. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri Hari. So today, the topic is Jnana Meets Bhakti. So the first session that we will take will focus on Jnana, or knowledge. And the second session will focus on Bhakti. The questions we will really address today is, what is this knowledge of the self? And why is there a need for it? And can one be without knowledge of the self? And what are the challenges in acquiring it and abiding in it? So before we start this, first let's think about life. How do we come to the need for knowledge? Let's just think. Many times we are very robotic and we go through lives just all the same. We wake up, we go to work, or we do our chores. We do the same things every day. And we don't really stop to think, why are we doing this? What am I doing this for? Is there a really higher purpose for living? And so life goes like this mechanically. And we feel like we're doing a pretty good job because we're living like how other people are. They're pursuing a career, they have a family, they're traveling, they're going here and there. I must be doing something correct because everybody's doing the same thing. A sincere seeker, though, looks at their life and says, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong with this whole picture. What is that which could be wrong? The first thing is our experience of happiness is really, really limited. We do things to be happy. We do everything to be happy. We wake up in the morning. We meet the people we want to meet. We eat the food we want to eat. We go to the places we want to go because we want to experience this taste of happiness. But am I really experiencing that in its true form? We find that the happiness we experience in the world is mixed. It's mixed with sorrow. So even if there's a friend that I want to meet, in the beginning of it, there's a little bit of an anxiety. Will that friend remember me? How will that be? How will that meeting be? Where will we go? What will we do? There's a little bit of anxiety. And then throughout the meeting with our friend, we're relaxed, we're enjoying, but there's also this little bit of thought that it's going to be over soon. And then at the end of the meeting, it's over and we're very sad that the experience was so short. So our happiness in the world tends to be mixed with sorrow in various steps. Our happiness that we experience in the world tends to be temporary. Even if we experience bits of it, it goes away very quickly. It also tends to be dependent, that if I accomplish something in life, then I will be very happy. If I'm able to achieve a certain goal that I've set for myself, I will be happy. If I am able to have an ideal body, then I will be happy. So it tends to be dependent and it's easily destroyed. It's easily destroyed, meaning we could be very, very happy that we got a really good grade on an essay or did really well in our career. But the minute that we find that somebody else did better than us, we're broken. So this kind of happiness makes us really think, is this what there is in the world? And I've been experiencing this happiness that's mixed with sorrow, that's temporary, that's dependent, that's so quick to break, so quick to diminish. And even this, how much ever I'm experiencing these sparks of happiness, I'm not becoming full. I'm not becoming content. So a sincere seeker strives to understand, what am I really searching for? And am I searching in the right place? When this mind starts to kick in, mindset, a seeker approaches a teacher and says, this is the condition. Now what do I do? And the teacher shares with them the scriptures or the Upanishads. And the Upanishads say that you are what you seek. Whatever it is you are seeking, you are already that. There's no point in going out there into the world trying to be happy. It's okay to go out into the world to do our daily dharma, to interact with people, to take care of daily needs that we have, that we require. But to pursue it for this permanent and infinite and independent kind of happiness it's fruitless. And so the teacher says that whatever you're seeking is you. You are that seed of Sat, Chit, Ananda, existence, consciousness, and bliss. So then the student comes to this sort of dichotomy that somehow the scriptures are saying that I am Sat, I am pure existence, the kind of existence that's always there. It's a changeless presence. Scriptures are saying that I am Chit, I am this pure awareness, and that I am Ananda, I am the seat of bliss. But I really don't feel like that. I really don't feel like that. I feel like I'm this changing entity, and I feel like this perishes. The body perishes. Everything about me perishes. My reputation, my name, my identity perishes. I feel like I'm an abode of sadness. So how do I put these things together? Can there really be a mix-up between the self and the not-self? Is it really possible? So with this much, we come now to see the Adhyasa Bhashya. And this is Adi Shankaracharyas' introduction to the Brahma Sutras. The Brahma Sutras are one of the Prasthanatraya. It is a text with a lot of logical reasoning that it takes up mantras in the Upanishads or verses in the Bhagavad Gita, and where there are seeming contradictions, the Brahma Sutra seeks to clarify it. But before the start of the Brahma Sutra, Adi Shankaracharya gives an introduction, and it's called Adhyasa Bhashya. Adhyasa Bhashya, Bhashya means commentary. Adhyasa means adhi as. When we throw something on top of something, it's called Adhyasa. And he starts by saying, actually, we cannot mix these two things up because they are so different. Actually, the self and the not self cannot be mixed up. So I'm going to read that portion, and then we will go through it one by one, right? So here he says, Yushmat asmat pratyaya gocharayoho vishaya vishayinoho tamah prakashavat viruddha swabhavayoho ittaretara bhavanupapattau siddhayam tadharmanam pi sutaram ittaretara bhava anupapatti. So what is he saying? He says there are two distinct things. One is Yushmat Pratyaya Gocharayoho, that which is the content of the you thought. Asmat Pratyaya Gocharayoho, that which is the content of the I thought. Vishayi Vishayi Moho, one is the subject, one is the object. Tamah Prakashavat Viruddha Swabhavayoho, one is like darkness, one is like light. And they're totally different from each other, but yet somehow they are put together. Somehow they are mixed up. And not only that, but there are four mix-up that happens. So here on one hand, we have the self. We have the subject. We have that which is the nature of consciousness, bliss. On here, we have something that's the not self, something that's the object of the nature of darkness. How is it that they become mixed up? It says that asmat pratyaya gochare vishayini chidatmake yushmat pratyaya gocharasya vishayasya tadharmanam cha adhyasaha tadviparyayena vishayinaha tadharmanam cha vishaye adhyaso mithya iti bhavitum yuktam. So the first thing is we take the self to be the not self. So we take the Atman, which is pure consciousness, existence, we take the self to be the body. So I am pure consciousness, awareness. I take myself to be the body. I take myself to be the mind, the intellect, the ego. This is called Dharmi Adhyasa, because I'm taking the self to be the not self. Not only that, but what also happens is what's called Dharma Adhyasa. So I not only take me to be the body, but I take all the properties of the body to be me. That's called Dharma Adhyasa. So I take the shortness, fatness, darkness, thinness of the body to be me. I take the calmness, the sadness, the disturbance, being focused thought. I take that qualities of the mind to be me. The attributes of the intellect. I take that which is smartness, dumbness, dullness, a particular religion, a particular nationality. I take all of that to be me. So not only am I taking the body to be me or the mind to be me, but I'm taking the properties of it to be me. So there is what we call dharmi and dharma adhyasa. At the same time, I take the body to be Atman. I think that this body is that Satchit Ananda. I think that this mind is actually Atman. And this is what happens in Chandogya Upanishad, in the 7th chapter, that Virochana takes the body to be that Atman. We take the mind to be Atman. So we feel that what the Upanishads are really talking about is the mind. So we take the not self to be the self. That's dharmi adhyasa. And then we take the properties of the not self to be in the self. So what happens is I take this body. So this Atman, the nature of Atman is Sat, Chit, and Ananda, right? So I take the mind, let's say, to be that Ananda. So not only do I take the mind to be Atman, I take the mind to be that Ananda, the mind to be that source of bliss. And this is where we fail, because when we take the mind to be the source of bliss, then all the work is happening in the mind. So 4 things are happening, right? 4 kinds of superimpositions. Taking something to be something else. I take the Atman to be the body, mind, etc. And I take the qualities. I not only take the Atman to be the body, mind, and intellect, I take Atman to have those qualities of the body, mind, and intellect. I take the body, mind, and intellect to be Atman. Not only that, but I take the body, mind, intellect to have the nature of Atman. This kind of mix-up is happening. Now, is it really possible that 2 really different things can get mixed up? So what does Adi Shankaracharyas say? He says, tathapi. He says, even if they are mixed up, right? Even if they are different, even if they're completely different from each other, tathapi. Anyonyasmi, anyonyatmakatam, anyonya dharmascha, adhyasya, ittaretara vivekena. Even if they're completely different, this superimposition, called mutual superimposition, anyonya adhyasa, is very much possible. It's very much possible for one to be taken as the other. Why? Because one is not able to see the difference. Avivekena, one is not able to see the difference. So if we never came to the scriptures, if we never had scripture in front of us, we would not know that underlying this body, mind, intellect, ego is consciousness and pure awareness. We would never know. So even if their dharmas are so incredibly different, it is possible to take them as one because we are not able to see the difference. And so what Vedanta tries to do first is separate them out. So he says, even if they're different, we are unable to see their difference. Atyanta viviktayoho, something that's so apart from each other. Dharma dharmiyo, these two kinds of superposition of the dharma and dharmi adhyasa. This happens because mithya ajnana nimittam. It happens because of ignorance. So what is the nature of adhyasa? The nature of adhyasa is we take something to be something else, and it's 4 different ways we do it, right? And we do it because of this mithya ajnana. Now here, ignorance is described as false ignorance. We take it because of false ignorance. What do you mean false ignorance, and why is it false? This ignorance is a seeming notion. They're not really, we are not really the body, the mind, or the intellect, but we take ourselves to be it because of this ignorance. And is it really real? Is this ignorance really real? It's not. We don't say it's absolutely real because it can be put to an end by knowledge. Once knowledge dawns, then we clearly see that we are not this. In fact, if we really think about it, we say, I am the body, but have we ever experienced ourselves being the body? Have we ever experienced that? We perceive the body, we know we have a body, we possess the body, and we are very much aware of the sensations of the body, but have we ever really experienced ourselves being the body? It's always kind of apart from us, isn't it? We always experience these sensations apart from us. I know that something's going on in my body, I can feel it, but have we ever become completely one with it? Have we ever completely become one with our mind? We experience these emotions that I'm happy, that I'm sad, and we're able to tell what's happening with the mind. There's always a perceiver. There's always a subject and an object. So even if we say, I am the mind, have we even truly had this experience? So it's just something to think about. So he says here, it's mithya ajnana nimittam. This is caused by ignorance. And because of this ignorance, satyanrite mituni kritya, I take the self to be the not self. I take the not self to be the self. There is a mixture. So although it is actually not possible, although we actually haven't really had that experience, but because of this superimposition, there is this seeming mixture of the self and the non-self. And what is our experience? Aham idam. I am this. Mama idam. That is mine. Iti naisaragikaha. I am loka vyavaharaha. And this seems so natural. It seems so natural to take ourselves to be the not-self. So then, what do we do? So Adi Shankaracharyas says, let me kind of tell you a little bit deeper what this Adhyasa is. Let me define it so that it becomes very clear in our minds. So here he says, Aha, koyam Adhyasa nama iti. What is this definition of Adhyasa? What is this definition of superposition? Uchyate smriti rupaha paratra purva drishta avabhasaha. It is like a kind of memory which we superimpose on another locus. So smriti rupaha means it has the nature of that of recollection, and paratra, we superimpose it on something else, and it's purva drashta vabhasa, means it's a cognition that we've seen before. So like an example of the snake and the rope. So it is somewhere, somehow, I have seen a snake or experienced a snake. purva drishta avabhasa. It may be real, it may be not real. It could have experienced it in a movie. And Smriti Rupa says that, and that snake is not there now. So purva drishta avabhasa means I've experienced some kind of snake before. And it could be real, it could be unreal. And right now, that snake which I have experienced before, I'm recollecting it. So Smriti Rupa means I'm recollecting it, means it's not actually there. And where am I recollecting this snake that I have so experienced before? I am seeing this snake where it's not. I'm seeing it in a robe. And that's called superimposition or adhyasa. So seeing something that's not there, seeing something in a locus where it's not, this is adhyasa. Later on, he will say this, atasmin tad buddhihi. So in that which is not there, I see it there. So I see the snake where it is actually not. I see the snake in the robe. And to describe this kind of adhyasa, now he takes, various examples. But before that, one main point that he says about this adhyasa or superimposition was that, again, it is not absolutely real. It's not absolutely sat, because it comes to an end with knowledge. Although we might see it, we might still see the appearance of something. That notion comes to an end with knowledge. And I'll give you an example in a bit. And it is not completely asat or non-existent because we experience it. So this adhyasa, this superimposition, is also called as something mithya. It's not absolutely true, absolutely existent, because it is removed with knowledge. But again, it's not absolutely not there, because we experience it. Now, what are these examples of superimposition? So there are some examples here given in Bhashya, and I'm going to go through a few more. Tatha cha loke anubhavaha. It is seen here, shuktika hi rajatavat avabhasate ekaschandra sadvitiyatvat. Sadvitiyavat. So now here, we'll think of the different examples of superimposition. First example he gives here is Shuktika hi rajatavat. Shuktika means the shell, and rajata, the silver in the shell. What's happening here in the silver in the shell? The shell, right, is there, and the silver, which is not there in the shell, I am superimposing it. I am seeing it there. I am cognizing it there, right? It's not there, but I'm seeing it there. And this, he goes to show how we superimpose the reality in the world. So there are two examples, right, that we often see, the silver in the shell and the snake on the rope. The silver on the shell is to say that this world is glittering. It is, because silver is shiny. This world is glittering. It can provide me peace. It can provide me happiness. Although it's not inherently there in the world. The world does not have that nature. The world's nature is anityam asukham loka. Means it's impermanent and it is of the nature of sorrow. It is limited. So although this is actually the nature of the world, we seem to see that it can provide some sort of joy and happiness. And this is the example of the silver on the shell. And because of this example, because we see that this world is very much real and it can provide us happiness, we start to run after it. So the silver in the shell, I'm seeing it glittering and I run after it. I want to take that shell because it's shiny. But upon taking that shell, we realize then it is actually just a shell. So one example is that. Another example of how we run away from the world. Because samsara is not just running towards the world, but we also run away from it. And for that, the example of the snake on the rope is seen. That on this rope, I all of a sudden see a snake. And so I am just frightened. I'm frightened. I think that there's something there going to get me, going to come after me, going to bite me. And because of that, we run away from the world. Okay? So because of this adhyasa or superimposition, what's happening in our lives? We're running towards the world and we're running away from the world. And so much of our efforts are only that. Something is so real, something can really give me happiness, something can really give me fulfillment. Let me spend my whole life pursuing that. And if this didn't give me fulfillment, then this other thing will give me fulfillment. This other thing will, didn't give me fulfillment. This other thing will give me fulfillment. So our whole life is just struggling to find that. Or we are running away. I need to avoid this because, it will cause me sorrow. It will cause me fear. So I need to avoid this person. I need to avoid this thing. I need to avoid that. And I avoid that. And we have a list of things that we need to avoid or just stay away from. So we're living in constant anticipation or in constant fear, just because of this superimposition. The other example he gives is Ekaschandra Sadvitiyavat. Ekaschandra, there's one moon, but because when I do this to my eye, I see two moons. Like now I can see two computers when I do this to my eye. So there's actually one being. There's actually one truth. But because of the defect of the stimira dosha, what we call your eye moving like this, we see two. So there's only one truth, one Atman. But because of ignorance, I see many jivas. I feel like there are many jivas. I feel like there's many truths. There may be many jivas, but I feel like rather there are many Atmans. There are many, many truths. And this is something that we cannot easily overcome. We somehow are able to come to the fact that I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the intellect, I am pure consciousness, but I feel like there's so many pure consciousnesses around, that there's so many of us around and everyone is their own pure consciousness. But we are seeing that, we are thinking that because we feel again that consciousness can be limited by the body, the mind, the intellect. It's quite crazy to think about it, because if we see space or if we experience space, space cannot be limited by the body or the mind or the intellect. In and through, there's space here, and in and through the body, there's space, and inside the body, there's space. But this body cannot actually cut space. It's there here, it's there in here also. The mind, the space is there outside, space is there also in the mind, intellect, equipment, right? So space is there and space is here, and the gross can never limit the subtlest thing. So that which is pure awareness, pure consciousness, how can it be limited by the body? If the body cannot even cut or limit space, that which is so subtle, subtler than space, how can the body limit that? We feel there are many because we are looking at people from the perspective of the body, the mind, the ego. And from that perspective, there are many. But in and through, there's only one. So because of this dosha, this ajnana, this ignorance, we feel that there are two Atmans or many Atmans. And the most beautiful thing is, this example, the moon represents prakasha. The moon represents that which is pure consciousness awareness, right? This ajnana, like this eye thing, doesn't touch the moon, right? When I do this and I see two moons, this doesn't touch the moon. So the ajnana or the ignorance never ever touches the self. It doesn't touch the self, but yet we feel as though it does. So these are some of the examples of the superimposition. So the first main superimposition that we have is we take the self to be the not self and the not self to be the self. So many grandeur, so many ways that can open up. And the second really main superimposition we have is that we give reality to this world and we feel like it's a source of joy. Another common example given in Advaita Vedanta is the mirage water. And why that example is given is because even after knowing that it's actually mirage water, even actually knowing that actually there is no water there, the desert sand, it's because of the way the sun's rays are hitting the sand, it gives an illusion of the mirage water. So even if I understand that it's an illusion, it continues to appear. So even after knowledge, the world will continue to appear. We will continue to have a body and mind and intellect, but the difference is we are able to comprehend the reality underlying it. Okay, so these are all kinds of superimpositions that we have. So now, how is this happening, right? How exactly is it happening? And is it possible that in Atman, we can superimpose something? Because we say, you know, we superimpose the silver and shell. We superimpose the snake and the rope. That's okay, but how is it in Atman, that which is, you know, infinite? How do we superimpose this? How do we superimpose all of these qualities and these notions? So it is said here, just like the way in space, right? Space is beyond the ken of our senses. Space is perceived through what we call sakshi bhasya. It's perceived, it's illumined directly by consciousness. So in the same way that we're able to superimpose the blueness in space, the shape in space, we are able to also superimpose in Atman itself. And again, this is because of avidya. So now here, it sort of goes into what is the difference between ignorance and superimposition, right? So we have avidya, which is ignorance, and adhyasa. Avidya is the cause. Adhyasa is really like the effect. Avidya, or ignorance, is that which is what we call avarna shakti, and adhyasa is the vikshepa shakti. Avidya is what we call as ignorance. Adhyasa is what we call error. So in the case again of the snake and the rope, I don't know that it's a rope. I don't know that it's a rope. And therefore, this is what we call ignorance. And therefore, I think that it could be a snake. This is the error or the adhyasa, right? What's so beautiful is that adhyasa, how adhyasa takes place is that partially the truth is seen. It requires that the truth is partially seen. Because when we say, this is snake, there's a rope there, and we say, this is snake. Actually, the this is belongs to the rope, and the snakeness belongs to snake. So adhyasa or superimposition actually requires that we see the truth, part of the truth, not the entire truth, but part of the truth. And then we also see the falsity. So when we say, this is snake, this is actually coming from the rope, and snake is coming from the snake. And this is how it takes place. We have this partial comprehension. So now this is ignorance and this is superimposition, and we clearly understand that this is the problem. The problem is not that I'm not getting what I want. I'm not becoming what I want to become. I haven't obtained whatever I had set out to obtain. The problem is we feel limited. That is the big problem. The big problem is we don't know who we are and we take ourselves to be limited. This is what the Adhyasa Bhashya is trying to do, trying to make us clearly see where the problem lies. Because I take myself to be this limited body, what happens in life is I spend so much time trying to make the body unlimited. It's very funny, but that which I already am, I'm already infinite, but I take and spend so much time to make the body unlimited. I try to, dye the hair, right? Or go through plastic surgery, or, put on so many cosmetics or clothes that will make me seem young, that will make me seem fresh or alive, or, long lasting, because I want to extend the lifespan of the body. This is what we want to do. And so because we identify with the body, we take up all the dharmas of the body, then all the effort becomes to expand and extend the body. But we forget that this is limited. No matter how much we stretch and try to work with it, it is limited. And we also forget that the body has its own dharma. It will grow, it will mature, it will decay, it will die. It has its own dharma. So the whole effort is in trying to make the limited unlimited. This is where my effort is in life. And with this, then I go a little bit nuts because I'm not able to accomplish it. And I also, do not succeed because the body has its own dharma. It does its own thing. So even if I try to stretch it, I try to change it as much as I can, it has its own dharma. It will grow old. Even if I don't want it to grow old, it will grow old. So we cannot fight against it. So our entire feeling of sorrow lies in that. And then again, when we take the mind, we want to stretch and expand the mind. So we want to mind, intellect, equipment. We want to know more. We want to study more. We want to have a great social life and great interaction and all of that. We want to do all of that, and we keep expanding the mind and intellect. But by how much? It has its own dharma of sattva, rajas, and tamas. It will fluctuate. It will fluctuate. It will go through so many things. And no matter what happens, no matter how hard we study, how hard we try, when we grow older, there is going to be memory loss. There is going to be a slowing down of the way the mind works. So when we clearly understand that the problem is not that, we're not getting what we want in life. The problem is that we're wanting the wrong thing. So the problem is that I didn't get what I want. I didn't get this. I didn't get that. The problem is we want the wrong thing. We want the impossible thing. We want to make this unlimited. And so because this is the problem, ignorance is the problem, and error is the problem, don't know who we are, take ourselves to be something else, then therefore the solution is Vastu Swarupa Avadharanam. The solution is Jnana, knowledge, which means it is knowing something as it is. This is the solution. So in life, there will always be, some might ask, right? There's always this doubt that comes. Okay, so when I gain this knowledge, when I know who I really am, will all my problems stop? Will all my problems stop? Will all of these things that keep happening to me, will it stop? The answer is the problems will not stop, but we will not see the problem as a problem. That's the answer. Because as I said, we cannot stop what the body will have to go through. Right? It will have to go through disease, it will have to go through decay, sickness, health, all of those things. We cannot stop it. The mind will have to deteriorate, intellect, it will have to go through its own thing. right? We cannot stop that because that is the dharma of the body, of the mind. But what can we stop? That we won't see the problem as a problem. Being unidentified with the body, we're not sad or happy if the body or mind is in a certain condition. And this becomes very clear in the chapter 14 of Bhagavad Gita, that the mind is above, the self is above and beyond the modes of the mind. So disidentifying with the body, the mind, the intellect, we do not see as a problem. We understand that they all have to go through what they have to go through. Everything will happen as it needs to happen. That is what knowledge is for. Now, what happens is he wants to tell us very, very clearly, where is ignorance lying, right? So here he says, okay, so I know now the problem is ignorance. Yes, I know the problem is ignorance, and ignorance causes error. Avidya causes adhyasa. Very good. I know that knowledge is the solution. Very good. Now, where is the ignorance and who has to gain knowledge? So here he says, Tatraivam sati yatra yad adhyasaha tatkritena doshena gunena va anumatrena api sana sambadhyate. So in adhyasa, what happens is, what is the substratum for this whole ignorance? The substratum for this whole ignorance is the Atman. And the object of ignorance is also the Atman. So let us take again the example of snake and rope. In snake and rope, right? The locus or the substratum, where is ignorance appearing? Ignorance is appearing in the Atman. But the object of ignorance is the rope. I am ignorant of the rope, right? So it's outside. And then again, in the shell and silver, the substratum of the ignorance is Atman. Ignorance is appearing in the Atman, but I am ignorant about what? I'm ignorant about the shell, right? So the object of ignorance is different. So in these examples, what we see is the locus of ignorance is the self, but the object of ignorance is something else. We are ignorant of the rope, we are ignorant of the shell. But in the case of this particular superimposition that we are talking about, the locus of the ignorance is the Atman. Ignorance is appearing in the Atman, and the ignorance is also about the Atman. So the object of ignorance is also the Atman, but yet the Atman is not ignorant. So this is a very, very important point. So I'll repeat that again. The locus of ignorance is the Atman, and the object of ignorance, what we're ignorant about, is the Atman, but the Atman is not ignorant. It is like darkness. Darkness resides in the cave, and it also covers the cave, right? But now, so who is ignorant and where is ignorance lying? Ignorance is in the jiva. Ignorance is the notion of the jiva. Atman is untouched by ignorance. Untouched by ignorance. Ignorance appears in Atman, but Atman is untouched by ignorance. It's just an appearance in Atman. Who is affected by ignorance? It's the jiva. So the ignorance lies in that individual, and that individual is affected by ignorance. Because from the highest standpoint, there is no ignorance, there is no knowledge. Atma in itself does not need knowledge, right? Atman doesn't need knowledge because Atman doesn't have ignorance. But what's happening is the jiva who feels that they're ignorant, that jiva now needs knowledge. So ignorance is happening here at the level of the mind, right? It's this notion at the level of the mind. I feel that I'm ignorant, therefore I need knowledge. But because I feel ignorant, I feel I need knowledge. But nothing is happening to the Atman. Atman is the substratum upon which all of this appears, and the ignorance is also about Atman. So here it says that this is how ignorance comes about. And not only that, but ignorance is the foundation of all of our transactions. So I'm going to read, I'll do some portions here, and then I'll read a little later. Everything starts with us taking ourselves to be the body, mind, and intellect. We start with these notions. So taking ourselves to be the body, mind, and intellect, this is how we transact in the world. So in Adhyasa Bhashya, what it says is, everything is then based in ignorance. Everything that we do is based in ignorance, because I start with the notion that I am this limited jiva. So all my interactions, all the things I do are based in ignorance. All the entire pursuit is based in ignorance. And even the pursuit of knowledge is based in ignorance, right? So every single thing is based in ignorance. Why are we studying ignorance so much? Why do we really want to come to the problem or the bottom of it? Because everything is based in it. If we didn't think that, if we knew who we are, then we wouldn't pursue all of these things. So finally, he says that to come to the truth of all of this, what is required is the knowledge of the self. So this Bhashya clearly establishes that ignorance is the problem and knowledge is the solution. So what is knowledge of the self? Knowing, so I'll answer the questions that we had. What is knowledge of the self? Knowing who we are as we are. And why is there a need for it? Because we are ignorant of who we are. We are ignorant of who we are, and then we superimpose all kinds of limitations on our being. And we spend our entire lives trying to expand our mind, expand our identity, because we want to be all existent. We want to be awareness. We want to be pure bliss. We are already that, and we are spending our entire pursuit in trying to make the limited unlimited when we are already unlimited in our real nature. So now the question comes is, how do we gain this knowledge? What is the way to gain this knowledge? And if we didn't have knowledge, could we still live in life? Could we still be in life? So the way to gain knowledge in Advaita Vedanta, we have the threefold path: Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasana. So what happens here? What is this art of Shravanam? This art of Shravanam is really being able to listen to the scriptures to remove pramana asambhavana. Pramana asambhavana means that we study so many things, we read so many things, but what exactly is the true purport of the Upanishads? What exactly is it trying to say? So in Shravanam, we find out that what the scriptures are trying to say is Jiva Brahmaiva, Jiva Brahmaiva, that the Jiva is Brahman, that the individual self is actually that supreme self. What makes Shravanam pretty challenging? So we all know that it's listening. We know that it's gaining the conclusive message from the scriptures that Jiva is Brahman. We also know that it's a systematic study. It's not something that we can just do any which way. Why it has to be systematic is because it requires adhyarupa and apavada. Basically, the methodology of the scriptures is that it builds everything up. It says, yes, you are a jiva. Yes, you have come to this world. And yes, you have to pursue knowledge. And yes, you have to be liberated. And yes, this is the journey of life. This is what we call Adhyarupa, building up. And then after that, it breaks down. No, you were not a jiva. No, you never had ignorance. No, you never had ignorance. And actually, you are ever free. You don't have to become liberated. You are of the nature of liberation. You are free here and now. And there's nothing else that's required to be done to be happy. You are already that. So because the prakriya is this adhyaropa and apavada, it is slowly building up and then breaking down. It has to be a systematic study. It's not something that we can just venture on our own. It has to be under a guru, under a teacher. Why? Because there's so many ways in which the scriptures can be misconstrued or misinterpreted. So when we have somebody who's clearly studied this knowledge and clearly has reverence and who's living this, then we can learn from them because they have the clarity. Why also we need a guru is because sometimes the challenges with Shravanam, right? Or when we try to pursue our own system or path to knowledge, is if it's something we like, we accept it. And if it's something we don't like, we don't accept it. Maybe it's possibly we don't like it because it's challenging our ego. So then we sort of leave that portion aside. If it's something that seems true and we can understand it and it matches our experience, we accept it. But if it's something that doesn't match our experience, then we deny it. But we don't know, we haven't experienced the depth of it. So how can we deny in the outright? So the challenges with Shravanam are we color what we hear by our own perceptions, by our own likes, by our own dislikes. And we tend to believe what we want to believe. And sometimes we also misinterpret. And sometimes also we don't ask the right questions. We don't think through before asking. And the trouble with Shravanam also, the challenge with Shravanam is it's not easy. This matter is so subtle, it's so deep, it's just, it's something that really requires sukshma buddhi. So for somebody to sit through Vedanta class is not easy. So the first step is Shravanam. It removes the pramana asambhavana, but even in that, there are challenges to that process. The next process is mananam. Now, what is mananam? Mananam, it removes now the impossibility. How can the jiva be Brahman? It is that reflection process which removes that impossibility of how can the jiva be Brahman. So now, this process can also be challenging. It can also be challenging because we don't think deep enough. We're not really taking time out to sit and think on something so incredibly deeply that we become convinced about it. We listen, and then we listen to something else, and then we listen to something else without any pause to think. So mananam can also be challenging. Today we'll just go through a little bit of mananam, just a little bit. Just really think things through. If that self is said to be Sat, if that self is said to be changeless, Sat means that which is changeless, that which is there throughout 3 periods of time, that which is there even beyond time, that which cannot be negated, that which exists independent of anything else. If the self is said to be that, what could that be? Could it be this very body? Could it? So through our own experience, we match it step by step. Could it really be this body? But we see that this body keeps on changing. It keeps on fluctuating. The way that we looked when we were very, very young is very different from how we look now or how we will look in the future. So this cannot be it. It cannot be that Sat. Could this mind be it? Again, it keeps fluctuating. It keeps changing. It keeps going through all its moods. That's why it has mood swings. Could this intellect really be it? Could it really be the changeless self? No, because again, it knows something today and tomorrow it might know more. And our knowledge grows again, day by day. Or it diminishes when we grow a little bit older. And could this ego really be changeless? No, because the notion of who I am is so different from who I thought I was, right? The Shubhani who I thought I was before is very different from who I think I am now. So when we really go one by one, could all of these entities that we are so drawn, identified, and attached to, could they really be us? And the answer is no, because they are changing. And that Sat is changeless. It's changeless. So already we understand one point that we are a changeless entity. And we experience that we are a changeless entity. We know that there's something there that doesn't change. There's something there upon which everything changes, but we do not change. Then we also understand that Sat is something that cannot be negated. But when we see the three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep, we see that in dream state, in waking state, everything's there. Body, mind, the intellect, we are interacting with the world, our sense organs are engaging with sense objects. But when we go to dream state, the physical gross body is negated, right? In dream, we have a different body, different kind of body. And yet when we go to deep sleep, the mind and the intellect, ego are negated. They are dormant. And so that cannot also be Sat. Although our body may not be there in deep sleep, their mind, intellect may not be there, they're dormant, we're still there. There's still something there. So that changeless presence that cannot be negated, that is called Sat. And through deep thinking, just analysis, we come to our conviction that this mind, body, intellect, ego, it cannot be that. But yet, I feel there's a changeless presence that's ever there. It doesn't disappear at any point in time. We're always there. And the second part is Chit, that we are pure awareness. Everything else that we experience, this body, this mind, this intellect, including the world, is an object of our experience. We are experiencing it as an object. We are aware of it. That's why we say, I'm aware of my body, I'm aware of my mind, of my ego, of my intellect. We are aware of it. And because we are aware of it, then there has to be something which is aware. If we are experiencing an object, there must be that which is experiencing. And that is called Chit. So this is also our direct experience that we are ever aware. There's that awareness that underlies everything. There may be objects of experience, but underlying that, there is that awareness. And these objects cannot know that awareness, but that the awareness ever illumines the objects. The body cannot know pure consciousness. The mind cannot know pure consciousness, nor the intellect, but pure consciousness ever illumines them. And through our experience also, we understand Ananda. Ananda means that we are the abode of bliss. But how are we the abode of bliss? Just think about how we love others, how we love in this world, why we love. We love people not because they are people, not because they are amazing. We love people or things because they give us happiness. So this becomes very clear in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Maitri Brahmana, that it says that a husband loves his wife not for the sake of his wife, but for his sake. A wife loves the husband not for the sake of the husband, but for her sake. So a parent loves a child not for the sake of the child, but for their sake. So when we look into this world, why are we really loving others? Why are we expressing love to them? We're expressing love to them because they make us happy. They give us joy. So because a child gives us joy, we love the child. Because the spouse gives us joy, we love the spouse. So much so that when that very person gives us sorrow, we don't want that person anymore. So we are not loving things for their own sake, but we are loving things for our sake. Then you're going to ask, okay, then how does that mean you're Ananda? How does that even come to your Ananda? Well, first of all, the fact that we love other people for our own sake shows that we love ourselves the most. Whether we want to accept it or we don't want to accept it, we love ourselves the most. The second point is that we love what makes us happy, right? So when the spouse, when the child, when the friend makes us happy, we love them. And the more they make us happy, the more we love them. And that's just the way life is. The more something makes us happy, the more we love it. So we love something that gives us happiness, right? And the more happiness it gives us, the more we love it. So now put two things together. We love ourselves the most. Number two, we only love what gives us happiness. Therefore, we must be that abode of happiness. We must be that abode of happiness because we love ourselves most and we only love what gives us happiness. So what's really happening in this world is we're going out, we're pursuing, we're having all these relationships, gathering all of these things because we want to feel that bliss of the self. So our nature is Ananda. We are pursuing everything to feel, to gain, to just get a sense of that bliss of the self. One of our Swamiji says, if you want to be happy, the best way is to agitate yourself. Agitate yourself. Agitate yourself. So the mind is so disturbed. And when it gets what it wants, it reflects the bliss of the self. And that's why it becomes peaceful. So all that's happening is that the self is the source of bliss, is the source of peace. And when the mind calms down, it's able to reflect that. So when we have such meaningful relationships with others, when we're able to experience things that we want, then the bliss of the self gets reflected in that very mind. So when we think this through, manana, we begin to realize that, hey, yes, I could be something other than what I've always thought myself to be. I am this, that, this chit, this Ananda. But that conviction has to go very, very deep. And not only one time, but again and again and again. And if there are any doubts, it has to also be removed from every single which way. So this is the process of mananam. So we've seen the process of shravanam, we've seen the process of mananam. What happens when I have this rock conviction, rock-like conviction? What happens then is the process of nididhyasana or contemplation. What nididhyasana does is it removes viparita bhavana or erroneous notions. Because as much as I've listened to this knowledge in a systematic manner, as much as I've maybe pondered and thought deeply about it, and as much as I'm convinced about it, I still feel like I'm not living it. I'm not manifesting it. I'm still doing what I used to do. It's as though I haven't transformed, I haven't changed. And why is this? It's because our vasanas or our impressions are so deep. They're so deep that I am so used to loving and caring and pampering my body and feeling like I'm the body. I'm so used to pampering my ego, building it up, making sure that it's acknowledged, that it's appreciated. I'm so used to pampering my mind. We're so used to doing this because we've done this our entire lives. So even if we know better, we still can't show better. And hence the process of nididhyasana. What does that do? It makes this knowledge a vasana. It makes that vritti a vasana. The knowledge is a thought, and it's a firm thought, and it is knowledge. However, it is not transformative knowledge. Realization is transformative knowledge. It is not just knowledge per se, but it's that transformative knowledge. And so when I sit down and when I start to contemplate on whatever I've strongly understood and been convinced about through my own understanding, that mananam is really important, that it has to be our own understanding. It cannot be somebody else's understanding. Our own understanding. When I sit to contemplate and really just let my mind be absorbed in that knowledge, that's the process of contemplation. In mananam, there's a lot of thinking, there's logic, there's analysis, there's writing down, all kinds of things are happening in mananam. Questioning is happening, coming to conclusions is happening. So the mind is still sort of just moving from one place to another. But when we come to contemplation, what happens is the mind becomes incredibly absorbed in that. There are no more roadblocks. There are no more, I think it's this, but I'm not sure. And I read somewhere it's this, but I read somewhere it's that. There's no more roadblocks. There's just the readiness of the mind to absorb in what? In that knowledge. Come so deeply and so completely that it's ready to just sit there. And when the mind just sits in that knowledge, gets absorbed in that knowledge, and bathes in that knowledge, then what happens is it gets rooted in it. It gets so rooted in it that even our impressions change. Even these deep, deep-seated impressions, deep things that we've always done, that we've always thought about, those change. And that is the fructification of nididhyasana. And so these are the three stages for being able to understand and realize the truth. So what have we seen so far? We've seen that there are some kinds of defects in the world, and those only become clear to somebody who really analyzes, who thinks, who observes, who watches. And when a sincere seeker goes out and does that, then they're able to see that the world is not giving them what they want. Whatever happiness they're searching for, it's not out there. And they go to a teacher. and they go to a teacher and they seek knowledge. Now, why are they seeking knowledge? Because the problem is ignorance. The problem is we take ourselves to be limited. This is the main issue. And we take ourselves to be limited in all which ways. We've seen. We take the self to be the not self, and then we take on those attributes. We take the not self to be the self, and then we take the nature of that. And in various ways, we superimpose. And the two main things we do, we take ourselves to be body, mind, intellect, and vice versa. And we also take the world to be very real. Then all of our effort goes in that pursuit. Our entire life just goes in that pursuit, and we completely miss out. So what is the solution? The solution is to pursue knowledge. Why? Because we are ignorant. Who's ignorant? Not the Atman. Atman is a substratum of ignorance, and Atman is object of ignorance, but who's ignorant? The Jiva is ignorant. And because the Jiva is ignorant, then it is the Jiva that needs knowledge. And how does the Jiva come to this knowledge? We saw through Shravanam, Mananam, and Adhyasa, because it has to be systematic. It has to be something that we deeply think about, and it has to be something that we absorb our minds to. Now, we come to this whole process, but yet we find that we're unable to acquire knowledge, and we're unable to abide in knowledge. Why do we have these challenges? First thing is, our Acharya in Sandipani always told us that we got a backdoor entry to Vedanta. Vedanta is actually so deep, telling us that we are the non-dual self upon which the entire world rests, from which the entire world emerges, is sustained, and it is dissolved into. We get that teaching, and we somewhat understand it. We somewhat get it. But these processes of Shravanam and Mananam and Adhyasa, we're not able to do it properly. We're not able to do it properly. We're not able to do it consistently. And most importantly, we're not able to do it deeply. And so even if we've been doing it, it's very superficial. And that's why it has to be repeated again and again and again. And this also will give some purity. But there are further issues. There are further issues in the mind which need to be worked on. The one issue is the mind is very distracted. It's very distracted. So even if it wants to listen Shravanam, and even if it wants to completely hold itself in Mananam, get convinced and think about something again and again and again, it gets distracted. The second point, that the problem of the mind, is that it's not subtle. It's not subtle, it's so gross, because we're so used to seeing things, hearing things, smelling, tasting. We're so used to this whole exposure, and we're exposed to this whole world of names and forms. So that subtlety of the mind is not there. And the third problem that we find with our mind is that it's impure. So even if I believe, or I come to understand that it is only the one non-dual self appearing as everything, still I crave for the world. Still I crave for the world. Still I want to run. I know that this is just an appearance of the non-dual Atman, but I want that position. I want that name. I want that appreciation. I want all of that. And this happens because the vasanas of a seeker are incredibly strong, So what can we do in addition to listening, reflecting, and contemplating? In addition to all of this, is there something we can do? And that answer is bhakti, or devotion. Slowly now, I'll just give a brief intro of bhakti, because tomorrow then we will really see how that helps in one's life. So the first problem is the mind is distracted, right? So what does bhakti do? Bhakti gives us an alambana, or a support which is not as subtle as Vedanta, but not as gross as the world. Because you see, we have to make the jump from something that's so gross to something so subtle. Anoraniyan mahato mahiyan. That Atman it is so pervasive, but yet incredibly subtle. I have to make that jump from the grossest thing in the world to the subtlest of the subtle. How do I make it? Bhakti is that midpoint, right? So hold the mind into that which is a form, a name. And when I use that to hold the mind, to say my mind cannot be held in inquiry the whole time, it can't be held in these texts the whole time. But when I use the mind and hold it into a form of Bhagavan, Bhagavati, of Guru, then what happens is I train it to be steady in one point for a long time. And this is not only for Vedanta, but this is for any worldly pursuit, right? The secret to any pursuit is that incredible amount of focus. Because with that incredible amount of focus, whatever takes us so much time, we can do in such less time. Whatever takes us so many resources, so many people to do, we can do in like less amount of people. Whatever takes us so much energy, so much effort, we can do in less energy, less effort. So this particular being able to focus on a single point for a long time, which is not as gross as the world of it, not as subtle as the Atman, that is brought about by bhakti, and specifically by the practices of japa and upasana. But we'll see other practices also. The second point, as I said, the mind is not subtle enough. The mind needs a doorway. How are you going to get to that which is full of words to that which is complete silence? How are we going to get to that which is so many incredible forms to that which has no form? How are we going to get to that which has so many names to one which has no name? So again, we make the transition. So don't go from all forms, all words, all names to none. People can make this transition, but very few people can make it. So we come to the idea of one word, one name, one form. It's a midpoint. Then the mind is also so impure. It still thinks all of these kinds of thoughts, which we don't want to think about. We also feel like, oh, why am I thinking that thought? I'm a Vedanta and I studied Vedanta, but why is anger still rising? Then we have two sorrows. One, that anger is rising, and that we are becoming angry. We should know better, right? One, that jealousy is rising, and that, well, we should know better. Why am I becoming jealous? Disturbance is rising, but why am I becoming disturbed? So for a Vedantin, they have double sorrow. Double sorrow because sorrow is coming, and next sorrow, so they know they're not supposed to be sorrowful, but yet they're sorrowful. So what's happening here? So all of these things still cloud the mind. So when we come to bhakti, it is like a cleansing medicine. It cleans away all of these things. We want to have pride. How can we have pride? Because everything we say is through the grace of God. So that feeling of pride also diminishes. We become jealous because other people are doing better than us, they're moving further than us. That also a living representation of God. So that jealousy also gets scrubbed. I'm being disturbed because so many things are happening to me. I didn't know that all of this will happen. Oh, everything, just have faith in Bhagwan. There is a deeper message to it. So in a way, this bhakti also helps us to purify the mind. And instead of the mind going out into the world, pursuing the world of objects, of pleasure, of this, that, the mind is slowly being brought in to something which is more divine, which is more sublime, and which is much closer to the truth than anything else. So for those who are not able to get straight to the truth, then at least come close to it. And that coming close to it, that medium is called bhakti. So more on what bhakti is, why is there a need for it, how to acquire it, and what happens when jnana finally meets bhakti. And to really understand that at the highest level, then there's really no need, there's no difference actually between jnana and bhakti. All of those things we will see tomorrow. Yeah. So I think today I will stop here. And if there are any questions, then we can take those up.
Thank you, Shubhani ji, for those wonderful insights which you had just shared with all of us. I would like to request the seekers to post your questions in the Q&A box. And as they come, I shall relay them to Shubhani ji. And as they come, Shubhani ji, could you please talk about those aspects of the mind? You mentioned 4 things. If you could please talk about them once again.
Sure. Yeah. So what I said was that the mind is quite distracted, right? So the mind, as much as it wants to hold itself in a particular thought, as much as in Shravanam, let's take, for example, even Shravanam. As much as we want to focus in Shravanam and we want to pay complete attention in Shravanam, the process of listening, mind still goes here and there. It might go home, it might go to the office, it might go to some other thing or some message that we got, it might go everywhere. As much as in the process of mananam, we want to think deeply about the self, deeply about the Atma. We really want to think about it and keep going in the same thought. And it can't go anymore. It gets pulled into something else. And especially in the process of nididhyasana, when we're sitting quietly and the mind has to be absorbed in the self, again, it gets pulled. And it gets pulled because of our various likes and dislikes, or various attractions and repulsions in the world. So that is one aspect why we're not able to really get this knowledge completely, or rather gain it so transformatively that it makes an impact in our life. The second one, which I mentioned, is that the mind is not used to being subtle. It's so gross. It's so gross. You see, the self is that which is beyond words, beyond thought, beyond comprehension. And every single day, all we're using is words. All we're using is sight, the sound. We're calling people names. We're using all very, very gross things in our transactional world. So immediately, because we're so involved in the gross world, to come to the subtlest of the subtle, that which illumines all of it, becomes a challenge. How do you just go from all of that to just come within? That becomes a challenge. And the third one, as I said, that even if we are pursuing this path, still these lingering impurities are there. Like, be it jealousy, be it pride, be it lust, be it disturbance, still these lingering impurities are there in the mind. So because of all of these things that are happening with our mind, we're not able to fully pursue the path of knowledge. And even if we pursue the path of knowledge, it doesn't yield its fruit. The fruit of knowledge is that one becomes, or one is able to manifest that divinity in their lives, what we call sthita prajna, what we call gunatita, who's able to really see oneness, who's able to rise above all joy and sorrow, who is able to be completely detached and yet love all. We're not able to see that result. So as a support to that, one then can take up the practice of bhakti.
Right. Thank you so much, Shubhaniji. And another question that I had from this talk was, you mentioned about how Atma is the substratum for ignorance. Could you please highlight more on that? And what is the difference, or how do I understand Atma and Jiva? If you could please elaborate on that. Yeah.
Sure. So when I had said that Atman is the substratum of ignorance, you see, ignorance has to rest somewhere, right? The substratum of the entire world, when we say substratum, the base, everything has to rest somewhere. Everything has to rest on something. So when we say Atma is the substratum of ignorance, that ignorance rests on Atma. It rests on Atma, but yet it doesn't touch Atma. So it appears on Atma, just like this entire world appears on Brahman. Entire world appears in Brahman. It has to have a substratum, has to have a base where it appears. So the entire world appears in Brahman, but yet never touches Brahman. So in the same way, Atma is a substratum for ignorance, but is never touched by it. Now, what is the difference between Jivatma and Atma? So it is just a slight difference of identification. So first we will define Atman. Atman is that consciousness, right? Consciousness, existence, bliss associated with the individual, right? So we call Atman. So that consciousness, existence, bliss, that's Satchit Ananda associated with the individual, that's called Atma. So other terms that we use are Sakshi, Drashta, Atma. What is Jiva? So it is that consciousness, right, with the individual consciousness, but identified with the body, the mind, the intellect. So when we say Atman, it's that individual consciousness, but not identified with the body, the mind, the intellect. But when you take that same individual consciousness, that's identified with the body, with the mind, with the intellect, that's called Jivatma. So Jivatma is the very one who makes this mistake, who identifies and thinks themselves to be limited.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you so much, Shubhaniji. Looks like we don't have any questions so far.
That's good.
Right. So I think we could continue our talk tomorrow. We can close for the day now and meet again tomorrow to know more about Bhakti, as you mentioned. Any closing remarks, Shubhaniji?
I would just like to thank Indika Moksha for this opportunity to again reflect on Adhyasa Bhashya and this path of self-knowledge. And I hope that we all become fit for it and are able to abide in who we truly are.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shubhani ji. Dear viewers, we will have the second part of the series, second talk in this series tomorrow, same time, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Indian time. Please do tune in and join in for the talks. We will conclude this session with the Shanti Mantra. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Dhanyavad. Namaste.
Thank you.